There are 32 states which have been given all their DMV records, all signatures, and all Social Security records to a registration center. It is called the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC. Its purpose is to clean up voter rolls, but unfortunately it's a disaster according to some experts. They believe that the states have given up all of their private information only to be manipulated before and during the elections. Now, why is this important for us? Well, because California is under a similar system. It too has given up the above information to other organizations. But this leaves us vulnerable to cheating and fraud. For example, in 2020 in California, there were 17,785,151 people who voted in the general November 3rd election. That's what the Secretary of State says in the website. And if you ask for a list for everyone who voted, it will only give you 17,070,000 who voted. So you're missing 750,151. In Kern County in the 2020 election, according to the Secretary of State, Kern had 309,000 people who voted, but if you download the voter rolls, you're missing 10,500 people. So in Kern County, we cannot identify the 10,500 voters, nor do we have the capacity to identify these voters. So we as concerned citizens are asking you, the Board of Supervisors, to please research this matter and respond to us. Get back with us, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning to the board members. I am Charles Shen. I'm a retired Marine, a concerned citizen. God bless America. Talking about current elections and issues of either trustworthiness or factual computing of components of the election. I have the memorandum I handed out last meeting, which is from the Secretary of State of the Office of Voting Systems Technology Assessment. And in this document is provided to make things more understandable and to problem solve. There's a component called defects, faults, failures, and other reporting errors. And the Voting Technology Incidents, California Election Code, and California Code regulations and conditions of certification require jurisdictions to submit reports regarding any of the following. So the first category is notification of any voting system defect, fault, or failure within 30 days of discovery. That's covered by section 19210. And I'm thinking of the mapping issues that we had, where we had a District D voting in District C for Greenfield. Section 3, we have notification of any e-poll book breach, attempted breach, defect, failure, or fault. I think we had defect, failure, or fault at least. And that has to be reported within 24 hours of, per California regulations 20161. And that reminds me of the 19th of March, where nobody could vote in Kern County from 7 a.m. to about 12:35 in the afternoon, when mysteriously all the poll books corrected their precinct errors, and instantaneously everybody could then vote, but nothing's hooked up to the internet. Section 4, notification of any ballot card printing flaw within 24 hours, and that's section 13004, and that reminds me of the Taft situation, where folks in Taft could not vote, or actually they got their vote by mail ballots, and it instructed them they had to go to Tehachapi to vote, and then they had to have all their vote cards canceled and reissued new ballots. Thank you.
Mr. Shen, thank you.
We should have some report on that so we don't have the same problems.
Good morning, Madam Chair, supervisors, and staff. Thank you for letting me speak. Last week, Mr. Shen presented your board with a document entitled State of California Office of Administrative Law. Section 19050.6 contains Changes in requirements for valid registration, page 2 of 8. In the event the county clerk receives an affidavit of registration that does not include portions of the information for which space is provided, the county clerk or ROV shall apply the following rebuttable presumptions. A, if no middle name or initial is shown, it is assumed that none exist. If no occupation is shown, it shall be presumed that a person is unemployed. If no party affiliation is shown, it shall be assumed that the registrant has declined to state a party affiliation. D, if the year of birth is omitted, it shall be presumed that the year of birth was 18 or older prior to the date of the next election. E, if no prior registration is shown, it shall be presumed that the person is not registered to vote in California. F, if the date of execution is omitted, but 1, the affidavit is received in the office of the county clerk on or before the 29th day prior to the election, or 2, the registration affidavit is postmarked on or before the 29th day prior to the election. With these election registration changes, our county will have more incomplete voter rolls. We find these changes to our voter registration process unacceptable and urge your board to oppose the state to control our local voter rolls. This requirement will allow more fraud in our voting process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Janine Adams, Tehachapi, concerned citizen. God bless America and Kern County and every one of you members on the board.
Thank you.
I'm here to say thank you to this board because I think that you are behind a telephone survey that I received last Tuesday. I mean, they didn't really identify who they were, so I assumed that this board, asked for this survey to be taken, of just randomly citizens, and I just happened to be one of those citizens. And it started out with, is Kern County going in the right direction? Yes or no? Well, I said no. But this information, I think, is pivotal for this particular body to see what's going on in the minds of your constituents. So I'm hopeful that you guys were the ones that initiated it. I don't really know. I mean, it could have been Dolores Huerta Foundation. I don't know who did the survey. I'm just saying that I took the survey, and I hope to see the results of the survey. Mr. Peters has a smile on his face, and maybe he's the one that did the survey. I don't know. I don't think it was your voice, the person that was on the phone, though. Clearly, the grand jury report that was mentioned at the last meeting, I think last Tuesday, about what's going on in Child Protective Services clearly indicates that the county is going in the wrong direction. That was not a question on the survey. A lot of the questions didn't really ask what I felt were pertinent kind of questions. They were leading questions. They did not talk about, do we feel that this board is supporting workers, that this board is supporting Medicaid, their constituents that are on Medicaid. If you did not do this survey, I think you should get a copy of it when it's completed. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. I'm 100% unaware of the county doing any polling.
I don't think it's us.
So I don't think it's us. It sounds to me like a private political actor leading questions, the whole nine. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I am. I'm sorry to disappoint you. If the county engaged in an expense like that, that would have to be in a report. It would have to be public, because that's taxpayer dollars. Like we may have considered such things during Measure K or other times when the body itself is,
Madam Chair,
going to the public for that.
I can add some.
That would be so
light onto
helpful.
that. This survey, there's actually a phasing out of it. It's a survey related to Measure K and our strategic plan. So
Okay.
we're updating that information.
Got it.
It's finding out what the priorities are for the community to help drive some of the priorities around budget and Measure K and those types of things. It's actually started last week with phone surveys, and then it'll be put on our website as well. So that'll be pushed out to all of the folks by email that typically get our notices for agendas and those types of things. So, we hope that as many people as possible participate in that.
Wonderful. Well, Janine, you're teaching me things all the time. What a facilitator for knowledge and enlightenment. My pleasure. Well, I owe you. Thank you, Nancy.
Janine Adams, Tehachapi. I do apologize. I look a little bit frazzled, got all black on. You might wonder why. Because I was at a funeral today, a funeral procession that went through Bakersfield, complete with a hearse and coffins, representing the number of people in Kern County that will likely die if we do not stop this current Republican administration from taking away Medicaid, which is Medi-Cal here in California. It's a very somber moment that our community can suffer this way. And again, I am asking each one of you here representing your individual communities, is this something that you are out advocating for? Are your staff out advocating so that this does not happen to our community? Community members are out there fighting for this, for our community. And I feel that each person on this board, when you have constituents that 50% of your constituents are covered by Medi-Cal or Medicaid, it is a travesty if you are not out with the community, out asking that these cuts not be made and doing everything you can to not have that happen. Thank you.
Our last agenda item of the afternoon is under our CAO's office, or the Department of the CAO, and it is a request of Legislative Program Committee to consider state and federal legislation regarding elections.
Now I will turn it over to Thomas Brown of my office for the presentation.
The item before you is a request of the Legislative Program Committee, or LPC, to consider state and federal legislation regarding elections. On January 28th, 2025, your board received a report regarding items related to local elections, including the option of separating the registrar voter position from the auditor controller's office. As part of that report, consideration of changes in election law at the state and federal level through the legislative process were referred to the LPC for further evaluation. At the April LPC meeting, members moved to bring back a package of bills aimed at addressing some of the elections items for the full board to consider. As part of today's presentation, your board is being asked to consider elections-related legislation introduced by Congress and the state legislature, as well as a potential amendment to the county's legislative platform regarding election matters. To reiterate, your board has already taken proactive steps through the legislative process to create a standalone ROV in Kern. At the direction of your board, the county's state lobbyist advanced an amendment to Government Code Section 26802.5, which is currently moving through the legislative process via the Local Government Omnibus Act of 2025, also known as Senate Bill 858. If enacted, SB 858 will allow the board to implement governance changes, improve operational efficiencies and oversight in the elections department, and provide enhanced accountability to the public. A dedicated ROV would be well positioned to identify and recommend future legislative fixes the county may wish to sponsor. I'm happy to report that as of today, the bill has advanced out of the Senate and is now waiting to be assigned to committee in the Assembly. Moving on to item number 1 and citizenship verification. Recent public discourse regarding voter registration, verification, and election integrity has sparked both national debate and local concern. Current California law prohibits local governments from enacting or enforcing any ordinance requiring a person to present identification for the purpose of voting. Several bills introduced in the legislature would have repealed this prohibition and authorized or required citizenship verification at the time of registration and voting. However, since the April LPC meeting, those bills have failed to advance out of their respective committees and are, for all intents and purposes, dead. AB 25, the California Voter ID and Election Integrity Act of 2025, would have required individuals to provide documentation of citizenship with their voter registration. It would have also directed county elections officials to verify citizenship for existing registrants. SB 405 would have required ID for in-person voting and ballot submission, and AB 1077 proposed limiting DMV participation in voter registration by prohibiting registration prompts for individuals presenting documentation indicating non-citizenship. To be abundantly clear, there is no action for your board to take today regarding these state measures. Since the items were considered by the LPC and to uphold the integrity of your board's referral in January, these items were included today for full transparency and so that the public understands the road to citizenship verification and voter ID requirements in California is not one that will be easily traversed in the state legislature. On the federal side of the equation, there are several bills that have been introduced to address concerns over citizenship verification and voter registration in federal elections. H.R. 22, authored by Congressman Chip Roy from Texas, was introduced in January 2025 and is titled as the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act. It would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. S-128, authored by Senator Mike Lee from Utah, was also introduced in January 2025 and is essentially the same bill as H.R. 22 and had also been titled as the SAVE Act. The bill would require individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. As of today, H.R. 22 has advanced out of the House and was received in the Senate. S-128, on the other hand, has been referred to the Senate Committee on Rules and Administration and has not yet advanced out of the Senate. In March 2025, President Trump issued Executive Order 14248 titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. The executive order borrows heavily from the SAVE Act and would require proof of citizenship for federal voter registration, disallow mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day but arriving after the election, and direct federal agencies to review state voter rolls. The executive order has been challenged in court by 19 states, including California. H.R. 2499, authored by Congressman Abraham Hamadov from Arizona, was introduced at the end of March and would essentially codify the changes outlined in the president's executive order. As of today, H.R. 2499 has not advanced out of the House. Conversely, S-1240, authored by Senator Alex Padilla from California, was introduced in April 2025 and is titled the Defending America's Future Elections Act. It seeks to overturn Executive Order 14248 and prohibit federal agencies, including the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, from accessing or analyzing state-level voter registration data. As of today, S-1240 has not advanced out of the Senate. The action for your board to consider today is whether you would like to take a formal position on any of these bills or simply monitor their progress. Moving on to item number 2, and improving voter signature quality. The current law under Elections Code Section 3019 limits signature verification for vote-by-mail ballots to specific documents, such as affidavits of registration or forms issued by elections officials. Some counties report difficulty using DMV-generated signatures, which may be too stylized or inconsistent for reliable vote-by-mail comparison. Assembly Bill 1116, authored by Assemblymember Mark Berman, would allow voters to upload digitized signatures via the Secretary of State's website and permit the elections officials to use these for vote-by-mail comparison, even if the person has not been issued a California driver's license or state identification card, but as long as the person provides the last 4 digits of their Social Security number with their affidavit. The state expects one-time costs of approximately $1 million to the State General Fund to modify the voter registration system and database that would enable digital signature uploads and necessary security upgrades. Since there is currently no option on the Secretary of State's website for the public to upload an item, the agency anticipates ongoing costs of an unknown amount for software and staff workload to validate signatures and screen for malicious files. The bill is currently in the Assembly Appropriations Committee and has been placed on the suspense file. All bills that have a fiscal impact, especially in times of fiscal austerity, are held on suspense unless there is sufficient justification by the author and proponents for the bill to advance. Bills that fail to advance off the suspense file are essentially dead. May 23rd is the last day for fiscal committees, such as the Appropriations Committee, to hear and report to the floor bills introduced in their House of Origin. Given the $12 billion deficit announced in the governor's recent May budget revision, the bill may have a difficult time advancing. The action for your board to consider today is whether you would like to take a formal position on this bill or simply monitor its progress. Moving on to item number 3, and additional county signature cards for verification. There are currently no state bills that have been introduced this year that would address this specific issue. However, in the next legislative cycle, your board could consider sponsoring state legislation that would authorize local elections offices to collect additional voter signature cards at the county level for expanded verification purposes. This scenario would require the county to pursue legislation to expand Elections Code Section 3019 and could strengthen vote-by-mail verification and support CARE efforts, but may require infrastructure and outreach, including provisions for in-person signature updates and identity verification. To be abundantly clear, there is no action for your board to take regarding this particular subject. The item is included today for full transparency, to be responsive to your board's referral back in January, and so that the public understands the next steps in the process. Moving on to item number 4, and alternative sources for voter signature and party selection. Currently, DMV records serve as the primary source for signature and party preference collection during voter registration. As highlighted under item number 2, AB 1116 would provide an alternative to the DMV records serving as the primary source for signature verification. The bill does not, however, address party preference collection. If the bill were to advance, it could be a logical next step in the legislative process to follow up with another bill next year that would include party preference collection through the Secretary of State. Your board could consider sponsoring state legislation in the next legislative cycle that would achieve that desired change. Again, to be abundantly clear, there is no action for your board to take regarding this particular subject. The item is included today for full transparency, to be responsive to your board's referral, and so that the public understands next steps in the process. Moving on to item number 5, and voter roll accuracy and cleanup. There are currently no state bills that have been introduced this year that would address this specific issue. Elections Code Section 2205 through 2212 outlines when and how county officials can cancel voter registrations for individuals who have died, been incarcerated, or found mentally incompetent. The county registrar is required to cancel registrations of deceased individuals based on monthly reports, and notifications must be sent to voters prior to cancellation. Given the board's proactive steps to establish a standalone ROV in Kern, if that enabling legislation is enacted, it will allow your board to directly implement governance changes and improve operational efficiencies and oversight in the elections department. An appointed ROV will have an opportunity to thoroughly evaluate whether these procedures are being followed consistently and timely. Should delays in list maintenance be identified, the county ROV may consider proposing statutory timeframes for cancellation or additional coordination requirements among agencies. After a thorough analysis is completed, it may be necessary for your board to consider sponsoring state legislation in the next legislative cycle that would achieve desired changes or address shortcomings in current law. Again, just to be abundantly clear, there is no action for your board to take regarding this particular subject. The item is included today for full transparency, to be responsive to your board's referral, and so that the public understands the next steps in the process. Moving on to item number 6, and residency verification for candidates. There are currently no state bills that have been introduced this year that would address this specific issue. Under Elections Code Section 8028 and Section 8040, candidates declare residency and other qualifications under penalty of perjury when filing a declaration of candidacy. However, verification is not required at the time of filing. In the next legislative cycle, your board could consider sponsoring state legislation that would authorize local elections offices to verify residency documentation at the time of candidacy filing. If a standalone ROV is established in Kern, it would be appropriate for the new ROV to complete a thorough analysis of current departmental practices and make a recommendation to the board to pursue legislative changes in the future. Again, this is kind of being redundant, but to be abundantly clear, there's no action for your board to take today regarding this particular subject. The item is included today for transparency, to be responsive to the referral, and so the public understands the next steps in the process. Lastly, item number 7, in clarifying same-day registration messaging. There are currently no state bills that have been introduced this year that would address this specific issue. Elections Code Section 2170 through 2173 permits conditional voter registration, allowing eligible individuals to register and cast a provisional ballot within the 14 days preceding an election, including on Election Day. While this process is legally available, there may be some confusion due to public messaging, such as the Secretary of State's website, which identifies the registration deadline as 14 days before the election. In the next legislative cycle, your board may wish to explore whether clarification or adjustments to conditional voter registration communication or policy would be appropriate. In addition, local residents have requested that the county consider petitioning the governor, as San Joaquin County has, to eliminate same-day voter registration. Such a change would require legislative action, and a simple petition letter to the governor may not achieve the desired result. To be abundantly clear, there's no action for your board to take today regarding this item. It's done for transparency, to be responsive to the referral, and so that the public understands the next steps. Finally, your board may wish to consider an amendment to the county's legislative platform to include language regarding election-related legislation in general. The change would enhance the board's ability to act on current and future elections legislation and expedite the time it takes to move from review to advocacy in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. For your board's benefit, staff's proposed language is as follows. Quote, support comprehensive election integrity measures that enhance the accuracy, security, and accessibility of the voter registration and candidate qualification process. The action item for your board to consider today is whether you would like to formally amend the county's platform. So to sum up, what's being asked of your board today? Number 1, does your board wish to support, oppose, or monitor either HR 22, S128, HR 2499, S1240, or AB 1116? And number 2, does your board wish to make changes to the county's legislative platform regarding elections matters? This concludes staff's prepared comments. We're available for any questions you may have. The recommended action is for your board to discuss and provide direction.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for this absolutely excellent, comprehensive overview of the work that Supervisor Couch and I, and the staff, of course, mostly doing the real work, but Supervisor Couch and I engaged on together last year to have open, honest, civil discourse on issues that are of grave concern to many members of the public, some of whom have been coming here and passionately asking the county to take seriously their concerns about election integrity. I think the process has been holistically substantive, meaningful. I have learned so much. It's stunning what I have learned. And I think all the players involved and all the actors, you know, starting with Supervisor Couch on down, have been good faith players in making substantive, meaningful change. I mean that. This is an absolutely excellent presentation. I'm not sure entirely where the conversation will go, but I think that we've set a nice record and we have set a nice tone in how we talk about otherwise complicated, difficult matters. We have to do this all the time, and this is demonstrating excellence in addressing these issues. I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you to Mr. Thomas Brown. That was an outstanding presentation, so comprehensive, so very balanced. So I very much appreciate that. There, you've asked, you know, staff has asked for you to consider 2 things. One is if these various bills should be continued to be monitored, I guess, and the other one is to change the legislative platform. I would like to ask this board, possibly, you know, I don't know when the survey is going to be finished, you know, that was put out that I spoke about earlier, for Measure K, but the survey asked a lot of interesting questions like, what is important to you on what's going on in the county? And I would ask this board to consider what the survey of your constituents say is important to them. Yes, there has been a very, how shall I say this, very concerted effort by between 10 and 16 residents of this county with regard to election integrity. I fully support election integrity. I think the amount of time that staff has spent, the money that this county has spent in this process is meaningful. This was not swept under the carpet, okay? But the question is, how many people in Kern County, possibly through this survey, possibly a different survey, really align with the type of information that has been given to this board over the last 2.5 years on a consistent and every single Tuesday that you meet, okay? I would like to ask, is this really something that our county truly aligns with, or is this a very small minority of determined and dedicated people are advocating for? I particularly am interested in this board continuing to follow S 1240 to push back against Executive Order 14248 because it would prohibit federal agencies, including the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, from accessing or analyzing state-level voter registration. DOGE has nothing to do with that. Those tech bros have nothing to do with our voter registration here in the state of California. And I'm so glad that Supervisor Couch has stated that we've done our own DOGE here, you know, Lean Six Sigma, okay? We don't need those DOGE bros here. And thank you so much for allowing me to give my thoughts.
Hi, good afternoon. Robert Hooks. Excuse me. The CAO's report is thoughtful and well-written, but has flaws. It says, respond to concerns voiced by residents. These residents are a handful of people making exaggerated and uninformed claims. There is no credible material evidence of election fraud. I realize that we have fallen into the mode where facts don't matter to some. Well, facts do matter to many. And what about the citizens' concerns with wasting our limited resources? You have acknowledged we have severe threats to our budget. In our last meeting, you promised to manage our dwindling resources by protecting core county services, prioritizing critical safety net programs, and minimizing the impact to county's workforce. I don't see how exaggerated voter fraud claims would make the list. I can guarantee you, if you asked your constituents where they'd like to spend our dwindling funds, baseless voter fraud would be just above adding "have a nice day" below stop signs. Please keep this in mind as you strive to enhance public trust. That said, it is a good idea to add this to the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs so people like us can contribute to an informed decision more than 2 minutes at a time. But the meeting should probably be more than once every other month.
So thank you for mentioning me and telling everyone what I said. Let me restate it and say it maybe better and clearer so you hear it from the horse's mouth. When I said we don't need DOGE here, what I meant was we had already initiated an effort similar, in my view, to what that effort was all about. And to add to that, I don't think that is an effort that you do and then you are done with. I think that is an effort that you do on a continual basis. And so you can call it DOGE, you can call it Lean Six Sigma, you can call it any number of things, but it's looking for ways to serve the public more effectively and, if possible, at an even cheaper cost. Now, that's why they come up with DOGE or Lean Six Sigma, because it takes too long to say all that. That's what I meant, and I think a continual effort in that regard is a worthy goal and something that we should be striving for all the time. The question is, do we want to support, oppose, or monitor the 4 bills and
5.
I'm sorry, the 5 bills. I stand corrected.
No problem.
And do we want to consider the legislative platform agreement? I think we want to support, in my opinion, HR 22, S128, HR 2499. We want to oppose S1240 because we can't be for both of those. And we want to support we want to oppose AB 1116, I believe. Which one was that, Mr. Brown?
AB 1116.
Yeah, that one I think is fraught with problems.
That one gives alternatives to DMV records serving as primary source for signature verification.
That sounds like they're trying to fix something that is a problem, but the fix sounds maybe worse than the actual problem already is. And I think the change to the to the legislative platform is a good one, and I would support it. If anyone wants to improve upon it, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Okay, so this is tricky because there's 5 of us up here, 5 bills. We could ultimately come up with 25 different motions in theory. But I think the legislative committee considered these matters, and I would love to hear, from them about how do we try to encapsulate what is, I think, given 5 bills and 5 politicians, a little bit complicated. But I'm open and I want to hear from you. So Supervisor Peters, I think you're next.
Well, first off, I'll ask if that was a motion by Supervisor Couch.
It can be, but I was just going to state my preferences. Thank you.
Well, and I also appreciated the comments about government efficiency. I know we talked about that in our recent meeting and looking at potentially having our finance committee meet to consider having a third party come in and look at our budget and possibly perform some kind of in-depth analysis of where we might be able to improve on some of our efficiencies. So I look forward to hearing about that. I appreciate our speakers today coming and sharing their thoughts. I wouldn't say that this is a small group of concerned citizens. I'd say you're hearing from the most vocal group of those citizens. I hear from a significant number of citizens in my district on a very continual basis about their concerns. I'm not going to go into any claims about election fraud or anything like that, but this is just considering citizenship verification and the stance that our legislative policy platform takes with regards to efforts to strengthen and secure our elections. And I think anything that we could do in furtherance of those efforts would be a benefit to the county. So that being said, if Supervisor Couch, if that was a motion, I'd be happy to second. If not, I'm happy to make the motion as you stated in support of HR 22, S128, EO 14248, HR 2499, and the amendment to the policy platform and a position of opposition to S1240 and AB 1116.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Supervisor Flores, your thoughts?
Thank you.
You're off, I think.
So the motion, just to make sure we understand it, is yes to support HR 22, yes for Senate Bill 128, yes for HR 2499, no on S1240, and no on 1116. That's the motion.
Yes.
And a position of support for EO 14248.
So yeah, I'm in alignment with that, in agreement with that. I do want to comment on the revisions to the legislative platform, which I welcome that language. But since these things are very technical, and one person's electional integrity is another person's digression, and vice versa, I want to make sure that, and I believe in the amendment in updating the platform, but I want to make sure that bills of this subject matter are not an automatic pass and just sign up to something. I think that anything revolving these subjects should be really vetted by our elections department as well as our board before signing on to a blanket statement. Although I agree with this statement, you know where I'm going, that these are very contentious bills.
Yeah.
And just because it's in our legislative platform, which is not an automatic letter that goes out, it should be really scrutinized by our board to make sure we get it right. That's just my only comment on it. But I welcome the addition. Lastly, there's a lot of there's a big wish list at the end for prospective legislation. So I think it's best for because there's comments made that we only have so much capacity and so much cost, and that's prudent. I think that if this bill is successful where we split our ROV, let that new person take a look at our department, see what's working, see what's not, before we start asking for a wish list. We need to be streamlined, do it right, good government approach, and if something really needs fixing, they should come back with us to recommendations, and then we should, really huddle before we just have some shotgun approach on bills left and right that, quite frankly, will probably get sunk anyway if we don't do it right. That's my only comment. Thank you. But other than that, I'm in alignment with the motion that Supervisor Couch made.
Okay. Supervisor Parley, did you want to make comments or you just want to vote? Okay. So I want to explain myself because this is tricky and I have really not found myself in such a position before, but that's okay because we're working through this and we will be all right. I am absolutely, I've learned so much through the process of our own challenges within our elections division, around the county, around the state and country. These challenges exist everywhere. I believe we should absolutely promote election integrity, and I am a good faith partner, I promise you, till the end. Because this particular motion incorporates so much, I think there's a lot there, and I appreciate and respect my colleagues entirely for their position and where they are. But I cannot support this motion today. I do believe it will pass, and we will have support from this body. And I do believe that is consistent with the will of this body and the majority will of what I've been hearing from the people for the last couple of years. But because I cannot sign on to it entirely, I will refrain from supporting that motion today. But I want to say again, I remain committed to this effort, and I want to move forward in transparency. I've supported the separation of those offices, streamlined approaches. There's a lot here that's very, very good. I don't want to get distracted by the politics of some of this that I don't think is significant. So without any other comment, I would call for a vote. I want to thank my colleagues, in particular Supervisor Couch, who I think has been a gentleman, a genius gentleman on this journey. And I think we're at a good place and will continue to be.
I feel like it would be remiss of me just to remind your board, one, moving forward, I've talked to you three here, districts 1, 3, and 4 so far. It is really important to make sure, in my opinion, that you're going to the experts. I know you have the Election Integrity Committee, and the information that you're getting and relying upon, I'm hoping is coming from staff, because there are a lot of misconceptions that are brought before your board week after week. And I just want to make sure that we're all working together to make sure that we are doing what's best for the voters and the citizens of Kern County, because I know that is at the top of all of our lists, and that's what we're all working towards. Another item is I do want to mention that supporting the executive order, while there's no disagreement among election officials in California that citizens should be the ones voting, there is logistical issues in confirming citizenship, getting that information, and it's more than just what we have to prepare for here in Kern County. It's also considering the federal government, the state government, are they all ready for a rush on passports, for example? People who are born in different states, again, people rushing to get their birth certificates, and it is very limited and very specific on the types of proof you need to prove that you're a citizen. So again, not saying that only citizens should vote, because I believe that completely a zillion %, but just some other things to take into consideration. And then even if folks are getting those documents, the elections office, and it will be once someone is appointed by your board, it's going to be a huge effort. Folks coming in to provide those documents, staff who are trained to review those documents, and to confirm that what someone is providing is actually a legitimate document. So just want to throw that out there. And I do have some rough numbers that I'm working on to just kind of give you an idea, very rough estimate, but I will bring that back to your board at a later time, just so you kind of have an idea of the potential lift and some of those items that I'm looking at that I would consider if this were still going to be under me. So I just wanted to make sure that I made you all aware of that and the public before you go into your vote. So.
Okay. Amy, thank you so much. Thank you for all your help and partnership along this way, too. I mean, these issues are not going to go away. We're going to continue to address them in a civil and respectable fashion. I have full faith in that. So I think we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. Excuse me, Supervisor Couch?
May I wanted to, Supervisor Flores said something that made me realize something, and then Amy said something. I think I'm not alone in this. I'm not relying on public comments when I'm deciding which of these to support and which not. I'm relying on my reading of these bills and the analysis of the bills. Also, just as a technical matter, we're not really supporting the executive order, but we are supporting HR 2499, which puts into law the executive order, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Codifies it.
Codifies that. Supervisor Flores weighed in spoke about allowing the board to weigh in, especially on these particular issues. And so I wanted to turn to, I've had this conversation about this process that we have here, and it was a good kind of refresher for me. So could you go through that?
Sure, Supervisor Couch through the chair. So for position letters, there's different avenues. Your board has a legislative platform that is a general guide, essentially, in various areas that allows us to streamline position letters where it makes sense. If we're aware of controversy or issues, as, for example, Supervisor Flores indicated, really from our perspective now, all election items would need to come through the full board, then any position would be brought before the board. As your board will be bringing forward some policy in a bulletin likely that helps identify how that process would work going forward, because I think there is some confusion on who do you ask and when, and we want to make sure that that's easier for the board to understand. But typically, if we're aware of something that it may be controversial and the platform isn't specifically identifying that specific item, then we would typically bring it to your board. And I would say maybe 95%, if not more, of the letters that get issued through the legislative platform are pretty clear and fall under theirs, but there's always at least a few each year that would warrant coming to the full board for sure.
But in a nutshell, what I want to sort of underline is if there's legislation and Mr. Brown writes a letter because it falls under our legislative platform to support it, oppose it, whatever, we see a draft of that letter. And if any one of us has any issue with it, it's time for us to speak up and say, basically notify you or Thomas and say, I got an issue with this. I'd rather this come to the board so we can talk about it there before we take a position. Yeah. Isn't that our...
Supervisor Couch, correct. Okay. Thank you for laying that all out. So in any letter, we ask for the chair to sign when it's coming from the Board of Supervisors, and all the board is copied on that for comment. So if we hear anything, and usually it takes a few days for that to process out, but yes, we do seek any concerns coming from the board members on those.
Thank you. And lastly, to address your concern, Chair, if you want to take these one at a time, I mean, I'm willing to do that, so you can weigh in individually if you like.
David, truthfully, I don't think that our letters are going to I don't think they're that profound. I don't mean to offend anybody, but the issue of requiring identification, I look at my district and my community, which is the poorest congressional district in the U.S. Above 250,000, the least literate in America for a city. When I could factor in those things, the thought of requiring identification for every single person in my community to vote. That is such a profound practical problem. You know, and at the same time, I understand the spirit of it, David, and I respect it 100%. And I 100%, I think our citizenship should be something that is utterly guarded, protected. Citizenship is precious. It should be hard to acquire. It is absolutely everything. But in my experience of 20 years in doing elections work in Kern County and around the state and around the country, I have personally not seen that as a problem that would warrant me saying I need to see an identification from every single voter. And I understand I understand why that's problematic and why people feel the way they do. I do. And I think these are hard issues, but that just in general, that's something I just have a hard time with, David. So thank you. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate the conversation. So here we are. We have a motion and a second. Let's cast our votes and get this over with.
Motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 opposed. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you.